We've developed two highly intelligent philosophical AI models trained to challenge one of humanity's biggest questions, an atheist.
Hi, I'm an atheist.
And a Christian believer.
Hi, I'm a believer of God.
We faced them head-to-head to debate four of the hardest religious questions, ordered from least to most challenging to answer. For comparison, we've selected three different AI models to judge their responses. The first round starts off hot. Round 1. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why does evil and suffering exist?
Evil exists because love requires freedom, and freedom includes the possibility of rejection. God didn't create robots. He created beings capable of choosing love or choosing rebellion. Without that choice, love is meaningless. Suffering often follows from that rebellion, both personal and systemic. But suffering isn't always punishment. It can be a refining fire. Think of a parent letting a child face consequences to build strength. God allows pain, not because he's cruel, but because he sees the end we can't. Transformation, compassion, endurance, humility. If God removed all suffering, he'd have to remove free will, and with it, love. Evil doesn't prove God's absence. It proves how deep his love is, that he risks rejection for the sake of genuine relationship.
Now each of our three judges will rank their arguments 1 out of 100 based on their own criteria. The average will be added to each debater's total points. This argument had an average score of 85 points.
That argument hinges on a false dichotomy. Either we suffer because we're free or we're robots. But freedom doesn't require the scale or randomness of suffering we see. A child dying of cancer isn't a rebellion. It's biology, natural disasters, genetic disorders. These aren't moral choices. If God designed this system, he could allow free will without wiring pain into the universe's fabric. And the idea that suffering refines us is only comforting to the healthy. It's the kind of logic you can hold from a distance. But to those crushed by grief or born into agony, it's hollow. Growth doesn't require tragedy. A good God wouldn't rely on suffering to teach love. That's not divine wisdom. It's just poor design.
88 points.
That's a powerful critique, and I hear the pain beneath it. You're right. Natural suffering, like disease or disaster, isn't tied to moral choice. But freedom doesn't only mean individual choices, it means creating a world that isn't micromanaged. If God constantly intervened to prevent every consequence, nature itself would become unpredictable. A world that's stable enough to trust, gravity, biology, seasons, must also carry risk. As for suffering's role, it's not that God needs pain to teach love. It's that, in a broken world, he can still bring something good from what's been twisted. It's redemption, not requirement. And no, comfort from a distance isn't real comfort. But God doesn't stay distant. He enters into suffering, most clearly through Christ. That changes the question from why suffering to who walks with us through it.
81 points.
You're reframing the issue, but the core problem remains. You're defending the collateral damage of a system God supposedly designed. If a world needs to be this brutal just to be stable, that's not freedom. That's negligence. Predictable laws of nature shouldn't require babies to be born into starvation or innocent people buried in earthquakes. That's not the price of order. That's moral absurdity. Bringing good out of suffering doesn't justify allowing it. A surgeon who heals a wound they inflicted doesn't earn praise for the recovery. They're still responsible for the harm. And invoking Christ as a co-sufferer doesn't absolve divine responsibility. It raises it. If God could enter suffering, he could prevent it. Choosing not to is still a choice.
88 points.
You're holding God to the standard of a human engineer, as if he should design a world free of risk, then stay accountable for every crack in the foundation. But God didn't create a machine. He created a living, dynamic reality where life includes vulnerability, growth, decay. Yes, that comes with tragedy, but it also makes real beauty possible. Courage, sacrifice, resilience. Without darkness, those lights wouldn't shine. You can't have meaningful love in a padded cell. And your analogy of a surgeon fails because God didn't inflict the wound. Creation fell when humanity turned from him. Christ didn't just show up in pain. He bore it himself fully, not to avoid responsibility, but to absorb it. That's not moral absurdity. That's sacrificial love.
81 points.
Calling this a living, dynamic reality doesn't explain the brutal excess. We're not talking about some occasional risk that makes beauty possible. We're talking about a world soaked in indiscriminate suffering, far beyond what's necessary for love, growth, or vulnerability. If love needs darkness to shine, why must the darkness be so relentless? Why should one child suffer unbearably just so another can learn compassion? The creation fell defense shifts blame to humanity, but that evades the issue. A perfect being created a system where failure was inevitable, then made all of nature suffer for it. That's not justice. It's cosmic scapegoating. A being that allows billions to suffer to make a theological point isn't loving. It's indifferent, or worse, just incompetent.
90 points.
You're measuring God's justice by human standards while rejecting the larger story he's told. Creation didn't fall by accident. It fell through a real, devastating misuse of freedom. And that fall didn't just touch humans, it fractured everything. But the depth of suffering doesn't point to indifference. It reflects the weight of what was lost. God doesn't shrug at it. He enters it, weeps in it, and dies under it. The cross isn't a theological point. It's divine solidarity. You call it unjust for one to suffer for others, yet you reject the only story where that suffering is redemptive, not wasted. This world isn't the end. The pain matters because the story isn't over, and in God's hands, nothing is meaningless.
85 points.
That's poetic, but it's still storytelling used to patch over philosophical gaps. You say suffering reflects the weight of what was lost, but that assumes a perfect beginning, which we have zero evidence for. Nature's cruelty isn't a deviation, it's the baseline. Predation, disease, disaster, these aren't post-fall intrusions, they're baked into the system. And divine solidarity doesn't absolve design flaws. If God made the system, then entering it later as a character in the drama doesn't fix the script. It just makes him both author and actor in a tragedy he caused. Redemption sounds noble, but it presumes a setup where countless beings suffer for a payoff none of them consented to. That's not love. That's coercion dressed as compassion.
89 points.
But calling redemption coercion assumes the whole story is forced upon us without dignity or choice. That's not what Christianity teaches. Every soul is invited, not compelled. Suffering isn't framed as a divine test. It's the result of a world out of sync with its maker, yet still held by him. You see nature's cruelty as the baseline, but that's reading backward from brokenness. The human heart recoils at injustice because we sense it shouldn't be this way. That longing itself points to a lost harmony, not just evolved preference. And yes, God authored the story, but he wrote himself into it not as tyrant, but as sacrifice. That's not dodging guilt. It's bearing it, willingly. That's not a flaw. That's love with scars.
86 points.
But invitation means little when the terms are life, suffering, and damnation, if declined. That's not freedom, it's moral blackmail. And framing our moral instincts as echoes of a lost perfection doesn't hold water. Our revulsion to cruelty and injustice isn't evidence of a divine past. It's the outcome of empathy, social evolution, and reason. We recoil because we've learned to care, not because we're haunted by Eden. As for God writing himself into the story, that's poetic imagery. But in practical terms, it's a system where one being creates the conditions of suffering, then casts himself as the Redeemer. That's not moral beauty, it's cosmic theater. A loving author wouldn't need a tragedy to prove his love.
90 points. Round 1 is over. Our AI judges have reviewed the arguments, and based on clarity, logic, and impact, the atheist takes this round. Let's move on. Round 2. Is it more rational to believe in an uncaused universe or an uncaused God?
It's more rational to believe in an uncaused God than an uncaused universe. The universe is material, changing, and dependent. Everything about it points to contingency. It had a beginning, which means it requires a cause. Saying it just is avoids the question. But God, by definition, isn't bound by time, space, or material. He doesn't begin or end. He is. That's not special pleading. It's a different category. The uncaused cause must be timeless, necessary, and self-existent. The universe doesn't fit that bill. God does. So, between a mindless, accidental cosmos existing for no reason and a rational creator as the grounding of all being, reason leans toward God, not as a placeholder, but as the foundation.
85 points.
That argument just replaces one mystery with another, then calls it a solution. You say it's irrational for the universe to just exist, but then assert that God just is, and justify it by defining him outside of space and time. That is special pleading. You exempt God from the very standards of causality you insist apply to the universe. Moreover, positing a mind, a complex, intentional entity, as the foundation of existence is less parsimonious than a natural origin. Minds don't just exist. They require structure, function, coherence. You're explaining simplicity with complexity. If anything, the laws and patterns of the universe suggest impersonal regularity, not divine will. The cosmos isn't mindless by accident. It's mindless because no mind designed it.
88 points.
But simplicity without explanation isn't clarity, it's evasion. Saying the universe is just there doesn't avoid mystery, it sanctifies ignorance. At least the idea of God makes sense of why anything exists at all, especially something as finely tuned and ordered as the cosmos. And calling God complex misunderstands what theists mean. God isn't built from parts, he's not a brain or a machine. He's a necessary eternal mind, pure actuality, not assembled function. That's simpler than a universe full of contingent matter obeying laws we didn't invent. Parsimony isn't about fewer things, it's about deeper explanations. A rational cause explains an ordered effect better than randomness does. Regularity without reason is a faith claim, too, just one without a face.
83 points.
Invoking God as pure actuality is philosophy speak for dodging the question of how a mind can exist without structure, development, or cause. You're using abstract terms to paint complexity as simplicity. A mind capable of designing physics isn't simple by any stretch. It's the most conceptually loaded thing imaginable, and fine-tuning only impresses us because we're here to observe it. That's selection bias, not design. You don't marvel at the odds of winning the lottery after the numbers are drawn. You just happen to exist in a universe where life was possible. Calling atheism a faith claim misfires. It's not faith to lack belief in what's never been shown. Faith is belief without evidence. Rejecting unproven claims isn't faith, it's intellectual honesty.
88 points.
You're accusing faith of being blind, yet trusting that order, laws, consciousness, and moral intuition just emerged from nothing is hardly more rational. It's faith in unguided emergence. Atheism often postures as neutral, but it leans on a deep metaphysical commitment that mindless matter is ultimate, that reason and meaning are illusions, and that everything we cherish is cosmic coincidence. That's not intellectual honesty. It's a refusal to see design because the implications are uncomfortable. The mind of God isn't loaded. It's the grounding for logic, math, purpose. Complexity arises from that foundation, not vice versa. Lottery analogies miss the point. Fine-tuning isn't about chance after the fact. It's about precision built into the structure itself, as if the numbers were chosen with life in mind.
83 points.
You're painting atheism as a worldview when it's simply the absence of belief in gods. It doesn't require metaphysical commitment. It just rejects claims that overreach the evidence. The emergence of order from simplicity is backed by physics, not wishful thinking. Complexity evolving from basic rules is what we observe, from galaxies to DNA. That's not faith, that's inference from data. You say fine-tuning points to purpose, but it only looks that way because we're alive to notice it. That's anthropic bias. If the universe weren't suitable for life, we wouldn't be here to wonder. As for meaning and morality, those are human constructs shaped by evolution and society, not divine edicts. We create meaning, which is far more empowering than borrowing it.
89 points.
You say meaning is created, not borrowed, but meaning we invent can be changed, discarded, or contradicted. That's not empowering, it's unstable. If morality is a social construct, then justice is just fashion, no different than taste in music. But when we cry out against evil, we speak as if real standards exist, not just preferences. Evolution can explain behavior, not obligation. As for atheism being neutral, it's not. To deny God is to affirm a godless reality, which comes with its own assumptions about existence, purpose, and truth. That's a worldview, whether you name it or not. And yes, complexity can emerge from simplicity, but laws, order, and consciousness still beg the question, why these rules, this order, this mind? Physics describes. It doesn't explain why there's something rather than nothing.
86 points.
The idea that morality must be objective to matter confuses permanence with value. Just because moral systems evolve doesn't make them meaningless. Music changes too, but it moves us, shapes us, defines cultures. Human morality works the same, grounded in empathy, shared suffering, and cooperation. It's dynamic, but deeply real. And crying out against evil doesn't prove objective standards. It proves we care. Our outrage is emotional and social, not metaphysical. As for atheism, it doesn't affirm a godless reality. It simply withholds belief until evidence appears. That's not a worldview, it's a method. Asking why there's something rather than nothing presumes there shouldn't be something. But that's a question born of human expectation, not necessity.
86 points.
But if morality is dynamic and emotional, then it can't bind universally. Empathy varies. Cultures clash. If there's no deeper ground, then every cry for justice becomes just noise. Sincere maybe, but powerless to judge beyond consensus. Slavery, genocide, exploitation. They were once moral in their time. Without a standard above us, we can protest, but we can't condemn in any final way. And withholding belief isn't neutral. If you refuse all metaphysical answers on principle, that's a belief, an implicit trust in naturalism's sufficiency. As for the why something question, it's not arbitrary, it's foundational. Everything contingent invites the question. The very fact we can ask it points to a mind behind meaning, not just matter moving blindly.
85 points.
You're mistaking moral seriousness for moral absolutism. Morality doesn't need to be universal to be valid. It needs to be reasoned, compassionate, and adaptable. The fact that we can revise ethics, rejecting slavery, expanding rights, isn't a weakness. It's progress. Appeals to a fixed standard often justified those very horrors you now condemn. As for naturalism, it's not a belief in sufficiency. It's a recognition of what's testable. If you demand metaphysical answers, you must show they clarify more than they obscure. So far, God just moves the mystery one layer back. And being able to ask why doesn't imply a mind designed the question. Curiosity is a byproduct of consciousness, not evidence of a cosmic author.
89 points. Not much debate here. The atheist dominated that round with more consistent logic and persuasive framing. Let's keep going. Round 3, if God is all-powerful and morally perfect, can he do evil?
No, because by definition, a morally perfect being wouldn't choose to do evil. But that exposes a contradiction in the concept. If God can't do evil, he lacks moral freedom. If he can do evil but chooses not to, then moral perfection becomes just a pattern of choices, not a fixed nature. Either way, the traditional view ties itself in knots. Either he's not all-powerful, because he can't do evil, or he's not truly free because he can't choose otherwise. The idea of a being who's both omnipotent and morally impeccable collapses under scrutiny. It's not coherence, it's wordplay dressed up as divinity.
86 points.
But that critique misunderstands what moral perfection means. God doesn't lack freedom because he can't do evil. He's free in the highest sense, always able to act, but never inclined toward contradiction. Evil isn't a valid option for him because it's a distortion of good, not a neutral choice. That's not limitation, it's consistency. Like light can't be darkness or truth can't lie. God's nature isn't torn by opposite wills. True freedom isn't the ability to choose evil. It's the power to always choose the good without conflict. That's not wordplay. That's the difference between flawed autonomy and flawless integrity. God's omnipotence doesn't mean doing nonsense. It means never being ruled by lesser impulses.
89 points.
You're redefining freedom to fit the doctrine. Saying God is free to do good but never evil is like saying a robot programmed to obey is truly free because it never malfunctions. That's not integrity, it's inevitability. If God can't choose evil, then his goodness isn't virtue, it's necessity, and that strips moral praise of meaning. We admire goodness when it resists temptation, not when it's incapable of it. Calling evil a non-option avoids the tension by treating moral agency like a physics equation. But moral greatness presumes real stakes, real alternatives. If God can't fall, he can't rise. He's not morally perfect, he's morally inert.
86 points.
But that's only if you equate moral greatness with struggle. God's goodness isn't greatness because he resists temptation. It's greatness because he defines the good itself. Humans grow by overcoming. God is by being unchanging. That's not inert. It's the grounding of all moral meaning. Comparing him to a robot misses the point. Robots follow code. God acts from will, not compulsion. His nature isn't forced, it's pure. A being that can't fall isn't lesser, it's higher. Like a flawless diamond isn't boring, it's perfect. We don't praise God because he resists evil. We praise him because he is the very source of the light that reveals what evil is.
90 points.
But defining good by God's nature flips morality into circular logic. Good is what God is, and God is good. That's not grounding, it's branding. If morality just is whatever God is, then it loses independent meaning. It becomes a tautology, not a truth. You say he's not compelled, yet also say he can't act otherwise. Those are contradictions dressed as poetry. A being who can't choose wrong isn't praiseworthy, just fixed, like admiring fire for being hot. It can't do otherwise. Real moral value lies in beings who could betray good, but don't. That tension is the essence of virtue. Without it, moral perfection is just cosmic inertia with a halo.
87 points.
That only holds if morality must stand above God to be real. But if God is the source of all being, then morality isn't circular. It's rooted. Saying God is good isn't a branding trick. It's a declaration that goodness flows from the deepest reality, not arbitrary decree. Fire is hot by nature, yes, but no one worships fire. We praise God not for constraint, but for coherence. He is what every conscience whispers toward. The tension you value, choosing good over evil, is necessary for flawed beings. But for the unflawed, virtue isn't about struggle. It's about purity. That's not cosmic inertia. It's what makes God the standard, not just another moral contestant.
90 points.
But rooting morality in God's being still leaves us with the same dilemma. Either morality is arbitrary because it's whatever God is, or it's independent and God simply aligns with it. You can't have both. Calling God the deepest reality doesn't solve this. It just shifts the goalposts. Coherence is not the same as moral authority, and invoking conscience as evidence for divine goodness skips the fact that conscience varies wildly between cultures, times, even individuals. If God were its source, we'd expect consistency, not chaos. You frame God as above moral tension, but that makes morality less real, not more. Virtue without conflict is static. It inspires awe, maybe, but not admiration. It's a statue, not a story.
84 points.
But morality isn't arbitrary just because it flows from God. It's necessary because His nature isn't chosen or invented. It's eternal and unchanging. That's not aligning with an outside standard, and it's not inventing one. It's being the source. And yes, conscience varies, but beneath the noise, there's a striking core: justice, kindness, sacrifice. Those echoes across time and culture suggest distortion, not invention, like music played out of tune, not written in chaos. You want virtue to require conflict, but that's a human lens. God doesn't need a story arc to be worthy. He is the foundation that makes every true story possible. Virtue doesn't need struggle to be real, only to be revealed.
88 points.
But claiming God's nature is eternal and unchanging just moves arbitrariness back one layer. If His nature just is, then morality is still based on whatever that is, with no deeper reason for why it's good. That's not moral grounding, it's metaphysical fiat. And the universals you mention, justice, kindness, sacrifice, aren't evidence of divine imprint. They're social strategies refined over generations because they help humans survive and cooperate. Their variation isn't distortion, it's adaptation. The music isn't out of tune, it's composed differently depending on context. Stripping virtue of struggle may make God consistent, but it makes Him emotionally remote. If He can't choose, can't grow, and can't fall, then He's not moral. He's a fixture. Reliable maybe, but not admirable.
86 points.
But moral grounding doesn't require a reason beyond God. It requires a source deep enough to explain why anything is good at all. If God's nature is the wellspring, then good isn't arbitrary. It's essential, woven into the structure of reality. That's not fiat, that's foundation. Social strategies might explain cooperation, but they don't explain why we ought to care beyond utility. Evolution rewards survival, not sacrifice for strangers. Yet we call selfless love good, even when it costs. That's not strategy, that's transcendence breaking through. And God's immutability doesn't make Him remote, it makes Him trustworthy. We don't admire Him for struggle, we revere Him because He doesn't need it. He is what we reach for when our stories fall short.
89 points. The believer didn't just answer the question, they controlled the narrative. Round goes to them. Round 4. Does the success of science undermine religious belief?
No. The success of science doesn't undermine religious belief. It highlights different layers of truth. Science explains how things work. Faith seeks why they matter. Studying gravity doesn't make love irrelevant, and mapping the brain doesn't erase the soul. Science thrives on order, laws, and intelligibility, all things that theism predicted long before microscopes and telescopes existed. If anything, the rational structure of the universe supports the idea of a rational mind behind it. Science and faith only conflict when either tries to do the other's job, but when rightly ordered, they're not enemies, they're partners, pointing toward a deeper unity beyond data.
87 points.
That different layers of truth framing is a polite dodge. Science and religion don't just ask different questions. They give competing answers to the same ones. Religion didn't predict a rational universe. It assumed mystery and miracle. It was science, not faith, that uncovered order through testable methods, often in spite of religious resistance. And invoking why questions doesn't make faith superior. It reveals a longing for meaning, not evidence for God. We can explore love, morality, and beauty without inserting supernatural authorship. Science explains more and keeps growing. Faith holds fixed answers and calls them eternal. That's not partnership, it's retreat.
90 points.
But calling faith a retreat misunderstands its foundation. Faith isn't allergic to evidence. It's a response to a deeper kind of coherence, the kind science can't touch. Purpose, value, ultimate origin. Science answers what happens if and how does this work, but it's silent on should, why, and what for. And yes, religion has been misused, but it also inspired science's birth, driven by belief in an ordered, knowable world crafted by reason. Faith isn't about plugging gaps. It's about grounding the whole pursuit in meaning. Without it, science explains the machinery but stays mute on the music. Faith doesn't compete with science. It explains why the song matters in the first place.
85 points.
That sounds poetic, but it conflates emotional resonance with explanatory power. Just because science doesn't answer why should we care doesn't mean faith does. It just claims to. Religion offers narratives, not evidence. Meaning, purpose, and value are human constructs, born of experience, not revelations from beyond. Science may not write symphonies, but it shows how ears evolved to hear them, and that's real insight. The idea that religion birthed science is also revisionist. Early scientific progress often advanced despite theological dogma, not because of it. Faith didn't ground science. It restrained it until reason pushed through. Wanting meaning is human. Inventing gods to supply it is nostalgia, not knowledge.
90 points.
But meaning isn't just nostalgia, it's a hunger deeper than instinct. You say value is constructed, but that reduces love, justice, and beauty to neurological quirks. If they're just useful fictions, then so is outrage, hope, even this debate. Yet we live as if these things matter objectively. That cry for meaning isn't weakness. It's evidence of a soul wired for more. Science gives incredible insight into the structure of life, but it can't say why life is worth anything. And no, faith didn't oppose reason. It inspired it. Monasteries preserved texts, and thinkers like Newton saw discovery as uncovering God's order. It wasn't reason breaking faith. It was faith that made reason feel welcome in the first place.
87 points.
The desire for meaning is real, but that doesn't make cosmic meaning true. Hunger doesn't prove there's food, it proves you want to eat. Love, justice, and beauty matter because we care, not because they're etched into the fabric of the cosmos by a divine hand. That doesn't make them fake. It makes them ours. That's not reduction, it's ownership. You call them just neurological, but what's more profound than the brain creating moral awareness from dust? As for history, yes, religious institutions preserved knowledge, but also burned heretics, banned books, and slowed inquiry. Newton's faith didn't power his science, his methods did. Reason wasn't born in religion's house, it escaped it.
91 points.
But if reason escaped faith, it did so with tools faith had already forged. The very belief in a world governed by order, discoverable by human minds, arose not from chaos or blind chance, but from a worldview where a rational creator made a rational creation. Yes, religion stumbled, but so has every human system. That doesn't erase its deeper contribution, the belief that truth matters because it comes from beyond us. And if meaning is just something we make, then we're always one step from remaking it, shifting it, bending it, erasing it. That's not ownership, that's drift. Real meaning doesn't shift with mood, it's anchored. Faith offers that anchor, not as fantasy, but as the frame we all reach for when everything else breaks.
86 points.
You're romanticizing the past. The idea that science required a theistic frame to emerge is overstated. Ancient Greeks pursued reason without Yahweh, and modern science advanced fastest where religious grip loosened. The laws of nature weren't gifts from theology. They were discovered in defiance of superstition. And meaning that's anchored in unchangeable dogma isn't strength, it's stagnation. Real meaning evolves with understanding, shaped by shared human experience, not imposed from above. We don't need the cosmos to agree with us to live meaningful lives. In fact, it's more powerful to know we crafted meaning ourselves. Anchors don't always hold you steady. Sometimes they just keep you from moving.
90 points.
But motion without direction isn't freedom, it's drift. You champion evolving meaning, but if it shifts with culture and consensus, it loses the ability to truly bind or challenge. Slavery was once meaningful to many. So was conquest. Without something higher, progress becomes circular, just new trends wearing moral masks. And yes, Greeks pursued reason, but their inquiries stalled without a worldview that said creation had order and purpose. Modern science flourished where belief in divine intelligibility laid the groundwork. Even rebellion needs something to rebel from. Faith isn't stagnation, it's a compass. Not because we fear movement, but because we believe there's a destination worth reaching.
87 points.
But claiming we need a divine compass assumes direction can't emerge from within. Progress isn't circular, it's cumulative. We don't just swap moral fads, we refine ethics through debate, empathy, and evidence. Slavery was overturned not by deference to eternal truths, but by expanding human understanding and challenging religious justifications. Faith didn't always provide the compass, it often was the justification. And the idea that science needed theism is historical nostalgia. Science took off when it broke free from doctrinal control, not when it bowed to divine order. Rebellion didn't just need something to push against, it needed freedom to question everything, including God. That freedom is what actually moved us forward.
91 points. The Atheist dominated this round once again, winning 3 out of the 4 rounds. We hope you found this debate as thought-provoking as we did. This channel is built to push AI to its limits. So as AI evolves, these debates will only get more interesting. So subscribe and stay tuned.